The last 2 decades of the 20th century were a golden age of technology. The rise of cell phones, the World Wide Web, personal computing, autonomous drones.
Change is occurring so rapidly that even those involved find it difficult to keep pace.
Witnessing every milestone was the TV series Beyond 2000. Its presenters travelled the globe, searching for innovations that would give us a glimpse into the future. Now that we're in the future, it's time to look back at the tech that did and didn't change the world. From the iconic to the offbeat.
Ready?
We're travelling back.
Fire.
Before 2000.
3, 2, 1.
The 80s and 90s were decades of bold exploration in technology, in the world, and beyond.
With the Cold War coming to an end, a booming global economy, and the ability to see other places in the world through the internet, it made us curious, want to see more.
And a wave of new travel innovations made moving across the planet more viable than ever.
There's places that we wouldn't have gone that now are just, yeah, of course we go there. It's unreal.
We were exploring the skies with greater freedom, reaching for space with revolutionary rockets, and racing across land and sea with unstoppable vigour.
It was about speed and looking good and just having a lot of fun.
It was a time that transformed the way we travelled, going faster and further than ever before and redefining how we got from A to B. Humans have always dreamed of flying, and in 1987, that pursuit reached new heights with the paraplane. The powered parachute let anyone take to the sky. No pilot's license required.
Well, there you have it. One of the few ultralights in the world that you can solo on your first flight. And the reason for that, it's been designed and engineered to be extremely simple to operate. Out the back, a ram air parachute that's similar to the type that skydivers and sport parachutists use. Up the front is absolutely minimal flying controls because you really don't need them. In fact, the only standard instrumentation on board is a wide-angle mirror, which is here, so that you can look back up to see whether the canopy is deployed correctly on the takeoff roll. Anyway, I'm about ready to go, Nathan.
Nathan Taylor had taught over 1,000 novices without mishap. Chris Ardle-Guinness nearly became the first casualty. But after a shaky start, he quickly stabilised.
I sometimes think that the safest thing is a little threat of danger because it makes you more careful, but the paraplane is actually deceptively safe. It's kind of hard to crash.
The plane was stall resistant and cruised steadily at 41 kilometres an hour. And even if things did turn south, death was usually avoidable.
One of my owners was taking off, and there was a brick building there. And he took off and ran right into the brick wall, hit the brick wall 20 feet up. It fell down on its side. And of course, the cart is very strong and protected in a roll cage. And it landed. He unbuckled himself and got out. And the first thing he did was call me to order parts and tell me it was the most amazing thing he ever done in his life, to run into that brick wall and never get hurt.
And with that glowing endorsement of the craft's safety, it was time for Chris to return to Earth.
I must admit, it was a bit eerie once I started to take off and the ground dropped from underneath me, and there's no floor there to make you feel more comfortable. But what's really fantastic about flying something like this is actually being out in the elements, to feel the wind rushing by. There's really not much else to do up there but sit up there and have a fantastic time.
Today's paraplanes remain one of the safest crafts in personal aviation. But they're more a weekend adventure than a go-to for sky travel. Back on solid ground, flashy cars were everywhere. But for a rock star Beyond 2000 host, it was starting to lose their luster.
Limos are fine if you like that kind of thing, but personally, I prefer transport with just a little more romance. And I think I found just about the ultimate executive toy.
Introducing the EXP-2. This mini airship hadn't yet whisked any wealthy businessman from A to B, but Beyond 2000 was hoping to witness its maiden flight.
Now, as you can see, this afternoon we've got a very windy day. It's the sort of conditions that would be very marginal for a larger airship, but it takes just a few hands to hold it down.
This scaled-down, more manageable blimp had another benefit. It made advertising in the sky more affordable than ever.
It was a smaller balloon, so you need less resources, less materials, less fuel, but from the ground it still looks the same size.
Builder Steve Garner had spent years perfecting a downsized blimp.
We've ended up with a fairly conventionally designed airship. This one is very similar to something like the Goodyear blimps that everybody is so familiar with. I can't say that I didn't literally scale down some ideas from other larger ships, but in general, it has to be looked at as a unique machine.
It looks like we're going to get a chance to fly. As you can see, though, we still get an occasional cross-gas across this hangar, just like yesterday.
In front of the cameras, the EXP-2 made its debut. But getting off the ground was a struggle. And if they were ever going to win over the public, they had a Hindenburg-sized hurdle. A more fuss-free flight method was available, but it had pitfalls.
Hang gliding is considered the ultimate flying experience because it's as close as a person gets to flying as free as a bird. Yet today's hang gliders are little more than sophisticated kites. Their portability makes them very convenient, yet their performance is limited largely by the endurance of the pilot and the whims of the weather. And although today's conditions look perfect, there are some thermals out there that hang glider can't fly.
So, in 1992, these aeronautical buffs invented the Swift sail. It made flying possible in any conditions.
Our basic goal here was to make it possible not just to stay in the air on a very light day, but to start going places. So the Swift is really designed to go at twice the speed of a hang glider, and that allows you to cover much more distance, and the glide angle is much shallower, which allows you to go farther.
For every 25 metres, the Swift lost only a metre in height. So gliders like Eric Beckman could stay in the air longer and land where they chose.
And with the Swift, I'm able to fly a little bit lower before I actually decide to go out to the beach, because I'm able to glide further. I can leave the hill with a little less altitude and still safely make it to the landing area.
It really combines the wonderful things of hang gliding, which is that sense of really being exposed to the elements, whilst also then having the range and the control that you would have with the normal glider. It's quite an extraordinary piece of technology.
Key to the glider's performance were its light but strong wings.
This one weighs about 41 pounds or 18 kilograms. Running its full length is a carbon fibre spar. There's a bit of Kevlar in there. And the skin is very, very thin, about 1.5 millimetres. It's made of a sandwich of Kevlar and polyurethane foam. But it's the flaps which give the Swift its greatest advantage. They make these wings very efficient over a wide range of speeds. But perhaps most importantly, they allow the craft, when they're pulled down like this, to slow down enough for the pilot to make a pinpoint foot landing.
I'll get ready here. I haven't got any wind, so I'm gonna have to bring it in quickly. There we go. All right, that was good.
The Swift sail never went mainstream, but it helped inspire today's rigid wing gliders and ultralight sailplanes. As hang gliders conquered unpredictable winds, commercial aviation faced a different hurdle: airport congestion. So engineers came up with this strange craft.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? These days, that question's more likely to be, Is it a helicopter or is it a plane?
Actually, it was neither. The VTOL, vertical takeoff or landing aircraft, ditched the runway and unlocked a whole new world of flight.
It combines the qualities of both airplane and helicopter, being able to do things that are not possible with either aircraft.
Leading this VTOL charge was the experimental V-22 civilian Osprey. The key to its versatility were its unique 11-metre blades.
They're called prop rotors, a combination of propeller and rotor. There are 3 of them on each of the gas turbine engines. If it tried to come down as a plane, the length of these blades would mean they would smash into the ground.
The vertical lift efficiency is very close to that of a helicopter, but the tilt rotor design means this craft has none of the slowing wind drag on its rotors when it tries to go forward at speed.
The result? It could take off quickly like a chopper, but cruise fast like a jet. As with many great inventions, this one started in the military. Most famous was the Hawker Harrier, which had served British forces for 3 decades. 5 years earlier, Jeff Watson had strapped in for a demo ride.
If you look down here on your left, is the nozzle lever and the throttle.
This combat VTOL wasn't just built for vertical takeoff, it was also perfect for short sea jumps to lift heavy weapon loads.
You all set? Yep. Okay, slam, and off we go. Oh, that's amazing.
Even more impressive, a manoeuvre that skipped the landing altogether. Simply hover and hook onto a crane.
That's quite unlike any other form of flying I've ever done. It's really quite extraordinary. All I can say is, who needs runways?
Well, aircraft that prioritise efficiency and safety do. The V-22 Osprey now serves the US military. But its high fuel burn and reputation for fatal crashes stopped it from ever flying civilians. Back to 1985, and another American military craft was making its mark, the Rockwell B-1 bomber.
The B-1B is the biggest swing-wing aircraft ever built in the West. Those wings are set at 15 degrees for takeoff. They sweep back to 67.5 degrees when the aircraft is flying supersonically. But the B-1B is designed to penetrate enemy radar at very low level, and flying planes of this size at low level makes a very rough ride for the crew. So the B-1B is fitted with LARC. It's an acronym. It stands for Low Altitude Ride Control System. And a system of sensors controls these little foreplanes, these little wings in the front, and dampens out the ride.
That was only half the challenge. Hugging the ground at 1,000 kilometres per hour required precision. So a terrain-following radar scanned and dodged obstacles.
So the old spy planes, they'd be up high, they could be detected, they could be shot down. And this was a bomber that could sneak in, well, under the radar, literally.
It wasn't just about flying low. The B-1B's menacing shape could resist nuclear blasts and carried the largest payload of any US bomber.
The B-1B is only about 2/3 the size of the B-52, but it can carry a far greater load of conventional and nuclear weapons. The bomb bay is designed to accommodate no less than 8 air-launched cruise missiles, with a further 14 cruise missiles on underwing pylons.
This formidable machine came with an equally monstrous price tag. 2 years and $40 billion later, the first B-1B entered the service. It was over a decade before it proved its worth in war. If you thought that was low flying, get a load of this. The Russian Ikranoplan was the largest ground effect plane in the world. The Soviets had spent 30 years secretly trialling it for combat.
The extraordinary fact is that until just a year ago, not just this site, but the entire city of Nizhny Novgorod was off-limits to all foreigners because of its military and industrial sensitivity. But now, as an indication of the changes going on, we can not only film the factory, we can go inside and see the latest model Ekranoplan under construction.
But this build wasn't for war. It was for mass transportation. At 100 metres long, the craft could carry 50% more weight than a conventional cargo plane.
The wings to hoist this giant plane aloft look short and stubby, but that's an essential part of the design. Although they're about a third shorter than the wings on a Boeing 747, they're much wider. That's to increase the surface area and gain the maximum benefit from the ground effect.
Larger wings meant more lift, so the plane could fly with minimal power and greater fuel efficiency.
What they looked at was these huge ocean-going seabirds. They're able to fly barely a metre above the surface of the water, and so they have translated that into a technology. You essentially are surfing that compressed air that's getting squished against the water, and you're just gliding on that.
But this majestic hybrid of a boat, plane and hovercraft didn't revolutionise cargo transport. Its massive size came with even bigger costs. So the Ekranoplan stayed grounded. The 1980s was all about pushing the limits. And in 1986, these Star Trek-looking wheels were taking on Ferrari and Lamborghini for the title of the world's fastest street-legal car.
You don't have to travel very long in the Vector Twin Turbo to realise that it pushes the outside of the envelope for what you'd expect of a normal road-going vehicle. It's a no-compromise blend of race car design and aerospace technology. The outer skin is made out of aramid fibre or Kevlar, and then they use S-type fiberglass, and it's heartening to know in the event of the unthinkable, a high-speed impact, that inside the fuel cell is a fire-resistant mesh, which is called ExploSafe. And the performance, well, it's totally breathtaking. The sweat and inspiration for the Vector Twin Turbo really comes from Californian industrial designer Jerry Weigert. Jerry, you must get some extraordinary reactions to a car like this.
Yes, the response is really incredible. It's kind of like driving a space shuttle into a commercial shopping area and the people just go into shock.
Well, that haircut in that car wasn't something you saw every day. And underneath the hood was even more astonishing.
Powerplane is a twin turbocharged all-aluminum V8. It incorporates twin Garrett Air Research turbochargers with water-cooled housings. Of significance is that you can increase the horsepower by cranking up the boost in the cockpit and generating from anywhere from 600 to over 1,000 horsepower.
The fusion of power and aerospace materials pushed speeds close to 400 kilometres an hour, which was fast enough to rival even today's F1 cars. This version was a prototype, but once it did hit the market, it was set to cost the price of a house.
For most of us, unfortunately, it's an unobtainable fantasy, something like akin to the Hope Diamond. But if you had a very malleable insurance broker and really good collateral and asset backing, then maybe this will be the car for you.
4 years later, we saw the first Vector retail at $450,000. But was it worth the outlay?
So did it really reach 400 kilometres? Was it that good? Did the engineering stack up? We do know it didn't sell. It broke down fairly regularly, but at least as a fast car, it broke down really fast. So you could say that was consistent branding.
The company produced just 16 more cars before it collapsed. But for the few who splurged on a Vector, it turned out to be a savvy investment. They are now worth over $1 million. 1 year later, we found a car worlds apart from the Vector's raw American power. The Solar Silver Arrow was the epitome of German precision and efficiency.
And while it may not be luxurious, it certainly does make heads turn.
The solar-powered experimental car had signature Mercedes suspension and steering, and a not-so-standard roof.
Now, the solar cells on the roof are capable in full sunlight of generating about 480 watts of electricity. That's just enough to power 6 75-watt domestic light bulbs. And that's quite incredible when you consider the speeds that this tiny vehicle is capable of performing.
Don't get too excited. It topped out at 85 kilometres an hour. Not quite Autobahn material, but speed wasn't its selling point.
The batteries themselves are capable of storing enough energy to allow the car to drive 100 kilometres or 65 miles without recharging. Now, how do I drive it?
Ja, dann Hebel für das Getriebe. Mit dem können Sie 3 Gänge wählen.
Ah, details, details. Let's just get the host inside it and see how she goes.
Ich wünsche Ihnen viel Vergnügen. Ja.
It certainly is very cozy inside. So cozy that you wouldn't want to drive this car after a heavy lunch.
I like how it looks like something out of a cartoon. Like, it looks like a joke, but they were very serious. During the 80s and 90s, we were becoming more aware of the impact that burning fossil fuels had on the environment. Being able to cleanly power your car and not have to pay for petrol was a dream.
While the rest of the world chased the sun for energy, other inventors looked back to old-school methods, like steam power.
Peter Palladine has revised the idea of using steam for transportation. And this time he says it'll be used for everything from inner-city buses to African river boats, wherever clean power is needed. Hello?
But he was starting with his own ride. The Pellan steam car still burned fuel to produce steam, but the emissions were a fraction of a standard car and the build much simpler.
For a start, it has no gearbox, no clutch, no timing mechanism, no internal combustion, and no carburetor. What it has is 3 cylinders and pistons and a steam generator. The generator only has 1 spark plug, which is used to ignite the kerosene to boil the water.
Steam power didn't mean it was outdated. Built with race car materials like Kevlar and tubular steel, the Pellant Mark II was light and fast, with one small drawback.
There's a bit of a delay before it takes off, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
Building steam to drive wasn't exactly a quick affair. But in full throttle, it raced down the road at nearly 220 kilometres an hour.
Peter, do you think this will catch on?
Oh, yes, I certainly think that it's got a huge future in front of it. Once we can show people how good it is and how good to drive and how clean the pollution from the exhaust is, how much better it is, then it should find a ready market.
He was kind of going in the right direction, but I think all of that has just been subsumed by electrification, where it is so clean, it's so green, it's so efficient.
Even more sustainable than electric was leg power, but it wasn't the fastest way to get from A to B. So in 1991, Fabrice André added a giant sail to his wheels, hoping the wind would give him a boost.
Well, you can never go faster than the wind, but by this little pocket wind meter, it's 15, gusting a bit more. Fabrice has had it actually up to about 30 kilometres or more, but today, I hope it doesn't get anywhere near that.
The theory is sound. It created a huge surface area so that a tailwind could push you forward. It does have some major downsides, least of all basically trying to open an umbrella in heavy winds.
But under a pro's guidance, it was apparently versatile. Fabrice had sailed over land, sea, snow and ice, testing every possible use.
People still do stuff like this. It's more like a niche, recreational, enthusiast affair. If it's got wheels or skis, if it can go fast, people want to use the wind to power it.
Backtracking to 1988, the US military was looking for a more lethal way to travel from A to B and gain supremacy in the Cold War. Enter the Abrams M1.
The M1 tank is one of the best
tanks in the world, they say it's like coming out of the Dark Ages. It's driven by a 1,500 horsepower gas turbine engine that can push it along at up to 50 miles or 80 kilometers an hour. And its main armament is this big 105mm cannon here.
Instead of firing standard artillery, it hurled an armor-piercing dart at nearly 2 kilometers a second and decimated enemy tanks.
It also has two 7.62 caliber machine guns as well as a 50 caliber machine gun. And its armor makes it the best protected tank that the American Army's ever had.
The Abrams tank really was the first time that America gained superiority in terms of tank design, in maneuverability, the speed, the level of protection. That really was a significant development in tank warfare.
It has since seen combat in the Gulf, Iraq, Afghanistan, and is currently deployed in Ukraine. The M1 remains one of the most elite and feared battle tanks in the world. The 80s and 90s saw rapid advancements in how we travelled on tracks, especially when it came to speed. And leading the charge was Japan, France, and Germany.
There was a lot of interest in how to move a large number of people across the landscape very quickly, and countries like France and Germany were investing a lot in building the very complex infrastructure that was required. But the Italians weren't so keen on actually those infrastructure costs.
So they created the Pendolino, a high-speed prototype that could travel on existing tracks thanks to one game-changing feature.
This train can maintain speeds of close to 200 kilometres an hour on old curved sections of line like this because the whole train is designed to lean into the corners.
Tilting by nearly 10 degrees, the Pendolino could go 70 kilometres faster than a standard carriage without compromising the ride.
Well, it's really a delight to travel in this train. We're barrelling through the countryside on the outskirts of Rome at around 120 kilometres an hour, and you really hardly notice that you're going into a corner because it banks so smoothly. It's very much like a refined roller coaster ride.
That seamless 10-degree lean was achieved via a sophisticated hydraulic system.
And in a 180 kilometre an hour curve, the train traverses it in around 2 seconds. So these hydraulic systems have to respond very quickly indeed, in around a tenth of a second.
So sensors detected the train's speed and angle and responded in real time.
It's such a simple idea, but it's just really elegantly done. It could go fast, it was very smooth, and they didn't have to invest in that really large-scale infrastructure that many other countries did.
14 of these trains are now being built at Fiat's Saviano plant. The first will roll out onto the tracks this year, and by 1990, just about all of Italy's major cities will be serviced by this ingenious design. And who knows, they soon could become as famous as that other Italian creation, the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
It didn't quite become the icon of Pisa, but this tilting train showed the world how affordable high-speed travel could be. Over 400 Pendolino trains now operate in 11 countries. But why tilts when you can float? Magnetic levitation was the holy grail of public transport. Japan and Germany were leading the charge.
Magnetic levitation, or Maglev, is such a cool technology. It basically uses electromagnets in the rail and in the train itself to create repulsion. So the train is literally floating, and that means zero friction, no moving parts. It can move really, really fast and doesn't require as much upkeep.
And in 1993, Russian engineers hoped to bring this futuristic technology to Moscow, starting with this experimental model.
The purpose of the TP-05 prototype is to test the viability of a short-haul maglev that can shuttle passengers from airports to city centres in a matter of minutes.
Obviously, when you're travelling at 250 kilometres an hour, comfort and stability are essential. And that's one area that the Russian designers have given special attention to. This small cross-section of a maglev carriage weighs 2 tons.
But with the magnetic field activated, it's incredibly sensitive to external forces and pressures. So I can move the whole structure simply with a push of my finger, as it's now sitting on a 10mm cushion of air.
It made for a smooth ride, right up until it was time for the electronic brakes to shine. Russia never cracked the Maglev, but not many countries did.
Unfortunately, we don't see more Maglevs today because they're really expensive to set up, and most importantly, they need a smooth, straight line of travel, which can mean needing to knock down houses or do very heavy earthworks.
Yet engineers still believe they are the pinnacle of high-speed land travel, and they've continued to push the technology further. The fastest Maglev in the world can now reach speeds of 600 kilometres an hour. Another track we sought to master was the racetrack. From the F1 to the MotoGP, and then, in Ferndale, California, the Kinetic sculpture race. A bold vision from an even bolder visionary, Hobart Brown.
If these people are successful, they'll compete in the greatest competition known to man. They'll cross sand, mud, 2 miles of water. So this is the ultimate competition. There's no greater contest than this and what they're going to do, the total human being experience.
And that total human experience meant racing the distance of 2 marathons in a human-powered masterpiece. Not just for glory, but for the future of the environment.
Why are we exercising in our bedrooms and then driving to work? Our message here is we're having a lot of fun showing how human-powered vehicles can actually do all kinds of tasks and still be successful and can also solve some practical problems that may exist in the future.
Getting the message of clean energy and sustainability away from being something that people feel they're being droned on about all the time into something interesting and exciting. That is just fantastic.
Hobart's message was spreading far and wide. Now in its 25th year, thousands of spectators gathered to watch the bizarre designs conquer all types of terrain.
Let's face it, Salvador Dali's mustache would have even twitched at this sight. Beneath the carapace, Kinetic technology is providing for a surprisingly smooth ride, but then again, we haven't yet hit the H2O.
Which was the ultimate off-road test to separate the winners from the losers.
Singing!
But triumph or tank, everyone left with a greater understanding of self-reliance and sustainability. Despite Hobart's death in 2007, his legacy lives on. Over 10 other cities around the world now hold Kinetic sculpture races. After nailing pedal power on water, we thought, why not take it a few fathoms deeper with a human-powered sub?
The submarine's engine is right here. Flesh and bone, blood and sinew. Isn't that right, Gary?
You got it.
The international submarine races saw teams of engineering students showcase their skills by building and racing submarines driven purely by kinetic energy.
We have a sub on the course. Alert, we have a sub on the course.
The goal, to beat the world record of 6.8 knots, 12.6 kilometres an hour.
I love kind of student or uni competitions like this. They have nothing to lose. You put a bunch of young, excited people together and ask them to solve a problem, and you get all sorts of different solutions.
In pursuit of speed, some went for simplicity, like the Tennessee Torpedo, which had a 1-to-2 gearbox ratio, doubling the pedal output. Others opted for complex builds, like the Montreal sub.
Their entry is the most technical one in the entire competition. They've even got a computer on board which controls the pitch of the propeller.
Points for originality went to the North Carolina team.
Their sub already looks very different, but it's being powered prophylactically. The Condom Nautilus is propelled by a rotating pedal-powered drum. Water is drawn into these condom-lined chambers and squeezed out the back.
So it's like milking a cow or squeezing a watermelon seed.
When time trials kicked off, underwater cameras monitored the speed.
Exit number 72858.
The US Navy and submarine contractors watched on, eager to see these innovative builds powered solely by human steam.
Let's go, let's go, let's go!
No one beat the world record. Montreal tapped out first run, and the Condom Nautilus couldn't push past 6 knots. But the Tennessee Torpedo put up a good fight, only to fall just 0.3 knots shy of the world record.
Competitions like this are like a symbiotic relationship. You can have big entities or corporations saying to students, hey, why don't you try making this cool thing? Help us learn and give us ideas for other applications. And then these young people get an opportunity to be creative, to be innovative, and just make out their ideas.
Back in 1986 Australia, there was no greater glory than winning the America's Cup. And the tech boom was adding a whole new layer of competition.
Today, the America's Cup is not just a race against the wind, it's a race for technology, and the Kookaburra feels that it's way out in front of the rest of the world's yachts. One of the things that's helping is a gadget like this. It's a heart rate monitor. The sailors wear it while they're training, and it monitors how they're coping emotionally and physically with a race.
But the real star of the show was the Microvax 1. This data-gathering computer was turning sailing into a fine science.
What it means for me, certainly, and for the navigator, is that it enables us to sail the boat more aggressively and be much more involved in the physical sailing of the boat.
It was a really novel idea, this idea of monitoring everything, whether that be the humans on the boat or the actual performance of the boat itself in real time, and alter what you were doing in response to it. I mean, that was truly innovative in that time.
The data was also being used to design a more competitive boat.
Chris, tell me about the new sail shape.
We're working on new sail shapes, but I can't tell you much about them at this point.
Well, what about the shape of the hull?
I can't tell you anything about that.
And 30 years later, the design specifics are still a mystery. Whatever the secret, it wasn't enough for the Australians to win the next America's Cup. But in the following years, data-driven devices would give competitors a winning edge when racing from A to B.
Data's everywhere today. They analyse every little bit of it, and if they can make tiny little percentage improvements, then that is all going to add up to improvements over time.
The 80s and 90s were all about being bigger, better, and faster. And our fail-safe trick to get there was to smash 2 great things together and watch what happened.
It's a combination trimaran and hydrofoil. As you can see, there are 3 hulls, as in a traditional trimaran, but once it picks up speed, it lifts out of the water like a hydrofoil. There are 3 major advantages to this boat. It's steady, it's manoeuvrable, but best of all, it's fast. In fact, Greg believes he may have designed the fastest sailing boat in the world.
Greg Ketterman was a pro at building fast boats. He'd helped create winning America's Cup yachts. Now his recreational trifoiler was entering a similar elite, clocking speeds of 70 kilometres an hour.
Whilst there's a lot of factors involved, the average sailboat moves at about 8 to 13 kilometres per hour. So 70 kilometres is much, much faster.
His secret? Lightweight carbon fibre, and of course, 3 foils. They lifted the boat out of the water and reduced drag. And with levers that kept the catamaran stable, even a beginner could take the helm.
Wow, this is fantastic. I may not be setting any water speed records, but I'm certainly having fun. Steering is very simple. I turn the boat by using foot pedals, and that leaves my hands free to trim the sails. Any beginner can do it. And because you stay in the cockpit and you're not hanging off the side or on a trapeze, it's very safe. So this should have great potential for the leisure craft market. Whee!
In the following years, the trifoiler became renowned as the world's fastest sailboat. Its innovative design inspired today's foil sailors that can reach speeds of over 120 kilometres an hour.
The trifoiler was so ahead of its time that an early version of it, called the Longshot, still holds the Class A world speed record.
To get from A to B even faster, adding a motor was a must. The Volvo Penta B28 skimmed the surface at 130 kilometres an hour.
Get ready, I'll let you know just before we make a jump.
When it reached top speed, it turned into a flying machine.
Okay, here we go.
Yet touching down was surprisingly smooth.
It's certainly a thrill being at the wheel of this racer. Even when travelling at high speeds, it feels remarkably stable. It's as though we're just skimming across the surface of the water. And when I go over the wake or through choppy swell, it handles very smoothly. Underneath the dashboard are a couple of foot buttons, which control the angle of the propeller. This gives the bow more lift for certain swell conditions.
But it was the sleek shape that truly controlled the waves, a design inspired by nature.
The undersurface is quite textured, in the same way that a dolphin has a rough skin surface. But rather than hampering the ride, these ruts help to harness the water's energy and improve the performance without needing extra horsepower. And these wings are like those of a seagull. By manipulating the pressure underneath, they stabilise the boat.
This lean, mean water machine did have one downfall, the $80,000 price tag.
The first boat like that is always going to be more expensive than the 15th because technology moves on, things become cheaper. So the first one is often smashed commercially, and then from its carcass, others pick learnings and use bits of technology, and one of them makes it.
While the B-28 never broke huge commercial ground, its design helped shape the performance boats of today. A more modest invention was the ski-free. Before self-driving cars and boats, this autonomous jet boat let water skiers cut loose solo. It didn't look cutting edge, but it was a masterclass in simple yet effective engineering.
The engine itself's a really compact little unit. Let's have a look inside. Thanks, Robbie. The steering and throttle mechanisms are hydraulically controlled. There are 3 hydraulic lines going into the tow cable. There's 1 for the throttle and 2 for the steering mechanism. Now, the whole weight of the skier, the full load, is taken on this Kevlar cable, which is only about 1/4 inch thick.
But the most impressive feature was at the end of the line. A remote control handle lets you steer and ski at the same time.
So this is my direction control,
Right.
left and right hand turns, and that's the throttle there.
So you can control your own speed, as fast or as slow as you want. It's up to you.
I think I'll start slowly.
But for thrill seekers, the jet-powered runabout could reach 50 kilometres an hour. And if you fell off, the ski-free automatically stopped.
Wow, that was great! You just have to learn to hang on to the thing and be careful when you're crossing the wake. Now, let's get that ski and have another try at this.
The ski-free kind of stripped water skiing down to its most basic parts. Like many pieces of tech, it was a more viable version of a dream we had had for a long time, to be able to be out on the open water and not have to ask our friend to drive the speedboat.
This universal vision has stood the test of time. Over the years, the ski-free has been ridden by everyone, from novices to serious hobbyists and pro stuntmen. 2 years earlier, we discovered another mind-blowing way to travel the seas. The Subskimmer 80 turned from boat to submarine in less than a minute. Hugh Oswald had designed it for military operations.
How discreet a craft do you think it could be?
Oh, well, it can be operated in a very discreet manner. You can motor it on the surface quietly. Equally, you can run it just under the surface. And, of course, underwater, it's very discreet indeed.
It was also built for endurance. Divers could hook up to the boat's air to stay submerged for lengthy missions.
To have a transportation device that goes from the surface of the water to under the water is not easy because you're moving from air, essentially propelling something through the air, to propelling something underwater. And so they're quite different technologies. So it was unique then, and it's still kind of unique now.
The Subskimmer 80 has seen many upgrades since and is still used in military operations worldwide. Nearly a decade later, we found an even smaller submersible. This one had zero stealth.
Well, this is Bob, short for Breathing Observation Bubble, and it's the latest concept in diving leisure. No mask, no regulator, just a bubble of air supplied by the compressed air tank down here, which is exactly the same as the ones used in scuba diving.
On the steering wheel is a computer, which monitors dive time and depth, as well as calculating the rates of descent and ascent, and decompression times.
It kind of reminds me of a scooter. People think you can just chuck the helmet on and jump on and go for a ride. However, like a scooter, the Bob submarine is more dangerous than it may seem at first. Without any training, people may not be prepared for how it feels on the body, and they may not know what to do if something goes wrong.
Throwing back to 1987 and getting from A to B as fast as possible was having downsides.
Hi. Don't adjust your television set. It's not you, it's me. I'm riding on a ferry in pretty rough weather. And if you take a ferry to work and then back home again, you know that sometimes it can be an unpleasant experience. But a company in Tasmania has come up with a new type of ferry that's better for you and your stomach.
Boat builder Robert Clifford had developed a world-first catamaran that sliced through the water and smoothed out the ride, as demonstrated on this prototype.
So we're taking the waves pretty well, considering a boat this size.
As you can see, the water coming across the bows dipping through and going through the crests of the waves. If it was a regular boat, when it hit those waves, it would thump or rise very quickly.
Thanks to its unique pointed hulls, it broke through large swells instead of crashing over them.
The customers get a much better ride. They go through the waves, therefore they don't get all the motions up and down and tossed around as much as they would in a conventional boat.
Australians would soon experience this new, calmer journey on the Spirit of Victoria and the Tassie Devil passenger ferries.
So this really learned from the kind of twin-hull canoes that were really used in sort of Pacific Islands, and then added to that a whole lot of technology. So it was really stable, it was really efficient and very sleek and fast. That's a great Australian innovation that's now in use around the world.
Robert went on to design nearly 100 more wave-piercing cats. They now account for nearly half the globe's large, high-speed passenger ferries in operation. In the years before 2000, we'd uncovered both strange and amazing ways to explore our skies, water and land. Nothing rivaled our desire to go to space.
There was such a renewed interest in really exploring this whole new frontier. We had so much political will, we had international cooperation, we had the space shuttles, and for the first time, space actually felt like it was within reach, not just of the elite, highly trained, but maybe even the ordinary person.
It ignited a bold new breed of backyard rocketeers, like Steve Bennett.
Space is defined as being 50 miles up, and I want to get a rocket above 50 miles before the end of the century. So by 2001, I want to be the first amateur to put a rocket into space.
His ticket there was the Star Chaser. Its secret ingredient was a sugar-based propellant, a budget-friendly alternative to NASA's liquid oxygen mix. But did it have the firepower for orbit? With his wife and co-pilot Adrian, Steve was about to find out.
The rocket's actually ready to fire now, and it's broken into three parts. There's the propulsion section here, the parachute housing in the middle, and then the payload bay and the nose cone at the top. But once it reaches its maximum altitude, it separates into two parts just here, and those two parts descend separately under parachute.
It's fully fueled and all the electronics are live, it's ready to go. It's like an animal. Rockets are notorious for being unpredictable.
You got that.
Oh!
I know.
So what happened, Steve?
Strange interference, possibly from the aeroplane.
Repairing the system was a simple task. Navigating the husband and wife work relationship was not.
Leave it in right till...
Adrian, for the last time, that isn't causing the problem.
But when it came time to launch, all arguments went up in smoke. The Star Chaser fired over 700 metres high.
Oh, I just want to collapse. Thank you, thank you.
Fantastic, really fantastic.
Oh, well, what a relief.
Steve has launched nearly 20 more rocket designs since. Some have reached up to 6 kilometres. Still, 90 kilometres shy of space.
This guy was a hero because he was having a go. And he didn't do it on our coin. So when you see a little guy just go it alone, that's fantastic.
While going solo was admirable, with a bigger budget, you could aim higher.
America has always been greatest when we dared to be great. Tonight, I am directing NASA to develop a permanently manned space station and to do it within a decade.
In 1984, the plan for an international space station promised to push space exploration into a new era.
And it's the space shuttle, of course, that's made all this possible. But when construction of the space station gets underway in a few years' time, there probably won't be anything like the degree of attention that these launches get now from the press, because the space shuttle will become a bit like a space bus, just ferrying supplies and materials up to the space station in near-Earth orbit.
The shuttle was the world's first reusable spacecraft. By 1985, it could carry greater payloads and had a faster turnaround time.
Wow, it's fantastic. But it won't be too long before the shuttle actually won't be enough, because when they start to build larger structures in space, like solar power satellites in geosynchronous orbit or space settlements in the vicinity of the moon, then the shuttle's going to need quite a bit of help.
So NASA was developing unmanned rockets called heavy-lift launch vehicles.
The advantage of this is, first of all, you don't have crew, so you could fit a lot more stuff into them, and they were also a lot cheaper. The downside was that they were using them once. Essentially, the costs did rack up, so these were not going to be a long-term solution.
The answer, a fully reusable rocket.
The idea of a reusable rocket was really attractive because launching rockets was highly resource intensive. It used a lot of fuel and it created space debris.
If you look at the Saturn V rocket, it was 365 feet long, started out at 5.5 million pounds, and when we shed everything and got all the way back home, having gone all the way to the moon, we were down to about 8,000 pounds.
But with the McDonnell Douglas DCX, you could preserve precious resources. The experimental rocket took off and landed vertically, thanks to 4 liquid hydrogen engines. It hadn't reached space yet, but once it did, the DCX would rival the space shuttle as a passenger craft.
The crucial test will be not just how high it flies or how fast it flies. Can we do it with 20 people?
But less than a year later, this prototype took its last flight.
Unfortunately, the DCX didn't become viable. It needed to hold a lot more weight, which held it back from ever reaching orbit. Nowadays, though, materials and manufacturing have come a lot further, which is enabling us to make this reusable rocket dream more of a reality.
In 2015, SpaceX launched and landed the world's first reusable rocket booster. As for the space station build, in the end, the space shuttle did the heavy lifting. It took 36 shuttle flights and only 6 unmanned rockets. Since the year 2000, over 260 people from 20 countries have visited.
It was kind of a period of space ambition. There was the Mars rovers, there was the space shuttles. Then, of course, there were bad things like the Challenger space shuttle exploding. But it was a time when people were really interested in out there, more so than now.
The 80s and 90s were decades that changed how we moved across Earth. It wasn't just about going fast, it was about style, efficiency, and exploring places we never thought possible.
I know what my biggest regret will be when I die. It will be that I didn't see more of the world. The more innovations that make it easier and cheaper and psychologically that we can take it for granted, the better.
And with every leap in technology, we've ventured outside our cities, braved the unknown, and charted a course to a brave new world.